Well, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Shifting Perspectives. My name is Derick Kopp and I have Bereket Kelile with me today. We're talking about today an idea that resonates a lot with Bereket and me. It's this idea of the results we get are perfect for the systems we've created. And I'll give full credit to Rich Litvin. This idea is original to him, not to Bereket or me. But I'll say it again because it's kind of a jarring phrase when you first think about it because it's not natural to what we think it should be. The systems or the results we get are perfect for the systems we've created. Bereket, why does that phrase resonate so deeply with you?
Yeah, it's very counterintuitive way of looking at things. And when I first heard that idea, especially the way he expressed that, it started off with clients who are describing results that they're seeing that are apparently unintentional, things that they don't want to happen, things that are not desirable, not good, and which is something I do all the time. And I always think of that as something that's happening to me. It's a result of something that's not under my control. And so I think that it's happening despite my best intentions or my best efforts. And instead it invites me to think of everything that's happening around me as the result of choices that I've made. And I think it probably brings into real clarity the distinction between having a victim mindset where you feel that, you're not in control, the locus of control is outside of you, versus having a mindset where you see yourself as responsible for everything, that you can choose how you react. You can choose how to, you're not just letting things happen to you, you're being more proactive. And so it just really does, I think, a great job of kind of clarifying that distinction. And it invites you to look at things a different way. And things do definitely look differently if you look at it as, oh, this is everything. This is all what I've created and what I am continuing to create.
It invites you, and I liked how you use the word invite, right? It invites you to have a shift in perspective because this is not the way that we naturally want to see the world, right? We naturally want to blame the world on why things aren't going our way. When in reality, the reason things aren't going our way is actually probably because we've actually created a system where things don't go our way, but yet in a very funny sense, it actually is our way.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll give a personal example of what this looks like in real life. So I've always, up until a couple years ago, didn't realize how strong of a desire this was for me to be liked. I wanted people to like me. No matter what people thought of me, I just wanted them to like me. And so there was this idea, if I was too much of myself, if I was too genuine and too authentic, people wouldn't like me. But I also had this other belief that if I worked really hard, I'd be successful, right? And so when you marry these two ideas together, that if I work hard, I'm successful, and I also want people to like me no matter what I do, I want people to like me. Mm-hmm. What happened was I created a system that gave me limited results because I didn't want to go too far ahead, or I didn't want to try things that were too new because I didn't know if people would like me or not if I did that, right? Mm-hmm. And so in the limited sense of success that I was having, it was because I had created a system that made those results just natural, mm-hmm. right? And so I walked around always wondering if people would like me, and I created a scenario where I thought people would like me. And in a situation when I thought if I did that, people wouldn't like me, well, then I didn't do it. Even though that thing might have given me more success, or might have given me more freedom, or might have given me more peace, I didn't do it because, well, that's a system I created, right?
Yeah.
And so I think of something else. I was just talking with a client, and she said, I have a hard time telling people no because I hate telling people no, right? And hate's a really strong word. Like, it's a really strong word. Why does she have such a hard time telling people no? Because she's created a system inside of herself that says, I hate it to tell people no. So why would she ever tell people no? Because she hates that, right? And as soon as we recognize that this is a thing, we get to shift our perspective and say, oh, I get to change the system.
Yeah. And she's probably seeing that come through as, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't have enough time. I'm too busy. You know, that's what's apparent there on the surface. Yeah. And then because we have this framework, we can look underneath and see what's really going on is, you know, I hate saying no. And so that then creates, that's a system that's designed to create, put you in a place where you're overextended.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and overcommitted. And now you got your whole calendar filled and you're stressed out and, you know, you need a vacation, you know, you need to take time off, you know, but yeah, it's everything she's doing is designed to get that result.
Yeah. So how to become overwhelmed, right? That's the system that she's creating. I've created that system before, right? Yeah. How to feel overwhelmed. Don't tell people no, right? Yeah. Well, naturally, it's those results are perfect for the system that we've created when we step into that.
Yeah.
What about this idea about, and this is another Rich Litvin distinction of a reported on world versus a created world, right? How does that sit with you? How does that fit into this conversation to you?
Yeah, I see it as a distinction between passive and active. You know, reported on, you're reacting to things that are happening. Again, you don't have any control. It's the outside world environment imposing that on you versus a creative world, a creative future where it is a blank slate and whatever happens is going to be the result of whatever I want to create. It's waiting for me to put something on the canvas.
Yeah. And when I look at the world through a created lens, I get to choose what happens, right? And it's not that my habits are a result of the world around me. It's that the world around me is a result of my habits.
Yeah.
And obviously I'll step in here and say, obviously there are things around us that are completely out of our control, like completely outside of our control. People, events, circumstances, they're going to happen, right? So we're not talking about controlling things that are uncontrollable. But I think what's really at the crux of part of this conversation is realizing, where is that distinction drawn, right? When we say I can't or they won't, is that really true?
Right.
Like, is that really true? We throw around this phrase, I can't, a lot.
Yeah.
I have before. Is that really true though? Like, you can't possibly, or is it I won't, right?
Yeah. Or I have to.
Yeah. Yeah. And just before we hit the record button, we were talking about I have to versus I choose.
Yeah.
Right. How does that rephrase it for you? How does that help you specifically?
Well, and I think in one way it can help with that question that you mentioned before. If there's something, let's say you're not sure if it's under your control or not, or even if it is, even if you know it's not under your control, it's still an interesting exercise to go through those things and say, I can't, I have to do such and such a thing. And then say it again, but instead replace I can or I have to with I choose to. And just hear how it sits with you, because and then you'll see, okay, is this really something that I'm unable to do, or is it something that I do have some control over? And again, it shifts your perspective, because when you start to think about what you choose to, what is happening in terms of your choices, these are things that I'm choosing to do, or what you were saying earlier about that created life, that created future. I think what that does is it makes it clear to then start to think about what you actually want. And once you get clear on that, and you're focusing on what you want, you start to get a little more clarity around that, and not only what you want, but what you're afraid of. And then that really starts, I think that's where it really starts to kick in, and the magic really happens, right? And that's where you start to really learn some things about yourself.
Saying I can't is almost a lazy way of looking at your future.
Yeah.
And again, bringing back in the systems the results we get are perfect for the systems we've created, right? Well, if you continue to say I can't, right? There's a system that says, well, I can't, right? So naturally, the results that you get are not the ones that you want because you've done nothing to create them. So what happens? Well, let's dive in a little bit. What happens when we flip this around and we say, you know what? The results we get are perfect for the systems we create. Now let's go create the systems that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What can that look like from your perspective, or what has it looked like in your life?
Yeah, I think that's where this exercise will help get you clarity around that, because when you start to look at the results that you are getting now, but from the lens of this was designed for that purpose, then it becomes immediately clear as you start to just go through it. Like I had that same issue too with being overwhelmed. And, when I look at how do I design that? Well, I procrastinate. I immediately, something comes up on my plate and I immediately think, can I put this off? Do I have to really address this now, or can I wait till later? I, make sure I don't put things on my calendar. I need to remember, and as you go through these things, then it becomes pretty clear. Oh, of course, this is why I'm getting these results. And obviously the answer is I need to take advantage of those tools. I need to make sure I put something on my calendar, else I'm going to forget. I shouldn't rely on my memory. I shouldn't, kick this off down the road. Maybe think of one small step I can take to address whatever has come up. It immediately starts to become clear what you need to do. And then when you flip it around and say, okay, what's a result I do want? Now I think your mind is more aware of how your actions, contribute to those results. And you can start to come up with the keys, the steps that you need to take in order to, get those results. And there's, there's tools to do that as well.
When we think about systems, right? You mentioned tools. The results we get are perfect for the systems that we've created. Sometimes these systems are just internal systems, right? They're beliefs that we've held true. And sometimes they are also the result of external systems that we've put in place. So I'll go back to my immature days when I was in college, right? I was in college for a total of 7 years. I never once put something on the calendar. I kept it all in my head. And yes, there were times that I realized that homework was due the next day that I didn't know. And I hurriedly got the homework done. And I lived in this constant frenzy of having to get stuff done. This frenzy, this hurried piece of life was perfect for the system that I created because I didn't have one. Right? There was no calendar system. And, I used to, this sounds so foolish and immature, and I am embarrassed saying it. I used to make fun of people who used to organize their time because I think in a sense I was jealous of the peace and the freedom that they had once they got it done. And I remember my wife, we were dating back in college, and she would get all of her syllabuses at the beginning of the semester, and she wouldn't be able to breathe until she got all those syllabuses put down into her calendar for the semester. And I used to make fun of her for it, right? I used to make fun of other people for this. But the results they got were they knew what was going on. And that was perfect for the system they created because they created calendars. right? And now as I've grown and realized how immature and foolish I was back in college, I use a calendar more now because I want different results than I had back then.
I did the same thing too. Yeah. Or I'd make fun of people. Oh, it's, you just have to do that because you're old and you can't remember anything.
Yeah. But yeah, we were getting the results that maybe we didn't say we wanted, right? But subconsciously, there was something fundamental inside of us that wanted these results of just being in this frenzy, right?
Yeah, I think especially if you think the frenzy is something that you don't want, you don't enjoy it, and you're complaining about it, and you're saying, "Oh, I wish I didn't have this frenzied life. I wish it wasn't always just hectic and running around." And you see that as something that was beyond your control. That's where I see this coming in and being very helpful. Because if you really enjoy it, I mean, some people do like that kind of life, that frenzied life.
Yeah.
And so obviously this is not going to help with that. But if you see it as, if you're looking at that result and you're saying, I don't like that, but there's nothing I can do about it because it was just, I had to do it or it's beyond my control. I think this is where it really comes in helpful, this exercise to say, no, this is actually the result that you designed.
Yeah.
Unwittingly, but these are all the pieces that come together to create that result.
Yeah. Maybe even a simpler question, again, at the core of what we're discussing is this question of how complicit are you in the situation you're complaining about?
I like that.
Right? Let's go back to immature Derick back in college. And I had all this homework due all the time. Well, that was my perception because I didn't know when it was due. And I'm sure I complained about it. And, Katie, my girlfriend, wife, I'm sure she asked me a version of this question. I was too immature probably to listen to it back then. But how complicit was I in the results, in the situation I was complaining about? Absolutely. I was 100% complicit. But I didn't want to admit that. Right? Because that meant that I would either have to acknowledge it and change, and I didn't want to change for whatever reason, or I have to acknowledge it and not change. And I didn't want to admit that I wasn't changing, that I was responsible for this hectic life that I was living.
Or like the woman you mentioned earlier, who she hates saying no, it uncovers that then can uncover what's going on underneath there. Why does she have that problem? And so this I think helps you to kind of diagnose there's certain things that you're doing, certain limiting beliefs, like you said, or actions that you're taking that you need to be aware of.
Yeah. And I'll share another example. We're sharing examples here just to show the practicality of how this works, right? Mm-hmm. And I think as you're listening to this, I'm sure there's a piece in this that you say, wow, I identify with that, right? Especially if this is a concept that you're hearing for the first or early on. But it was the idea of someone who had lost her husband and was grieving, and very, very sad time. And she called a counseling program and said, I wish somebody could help me, but nobody can help me. And he said, oh, I'm really sorry to hear what's going on. I'll tell you what, let me put you in contact with one of our groups in your area that are meeting, right? This is pre-COVID, where meeting in groups was normal. And she said, no, I don't like meeting in groups. I really don't. Okay, perfect. Let me put you in contact with one of our counselors who's in your area, and you can meet with them. No, that's not going to work because I don't really want to leave my house. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if you give me your email address, I will send you a free link to click on to access some of our counseling material. No, I don't want to do that because I don't give up my personal information. Well, if you listen to the words she said early on, she says, nobody can help me, right? The results that she was getting that nobody could help her was perfect for the system that she created because she believed that nobody could help her. That's a really sad and real example, which I'll bring in another piece here is be careful the words we say, because we just might start believing them, right? If you truly believe that nobody can help you, you believe those words, and then you say those words, and it becomes this reinforcing belief that you have about yourself, right? I hate saying no to people. Well, you can really start believing that, right? And this is reinforcing belief and habit, and it's this identity that you create. And now the system of being or the results of being overwhelmed are perfect for the system that you created, right? This is how this works. Is there ever a time that this doesn't work, that the statement doesn't apply?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, as we alluded to, I mean, there are situations where you're unable, and I like that word to kind of distinguish between something that you just can't do, quote unquote, can't, which can mean any number of things, versus something that you really just aren't unable to do. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And that could be an internal disability, or it could be something in the environment there where there is coercion of some sort.
Yeah. Except for those times when you're unable, and I like that word, the unable piece, right? And again, this goes back to truly being honest and transparent, that it's an inability, it's not a choice, right? That you're unable to do it. Aside from that, I think if we want to grow, if we want to change, right? And that's the purpose of this podcast, is shifting perspectives, because we want to grow. We want to have a different perspective on life. I would encourage me, you, everybody watching, to apply this statement to every situation that you're in, right? If something's not going your way, right? Simple question: how complicit are you in the situation you're complaining about? And then consider it through the light of, or the lens of, this idea that the results you get are perfect for the system you've created. What system have you created, right? And start dissecting this. And let's be honest, sometimes our brain is so blind to the systems that we've created, right, that we don't even realize it. Asking somebody for help might be a good idea. Say, this is the result I'm getting. Why do you think this keeps on happening to me? And my guess is that if that person is a true friend, mentor, counselor, coach, they know. It's pretty obvious to other people, right?
And for a lot of people, they know that they're aware of the things that they're doing. It's also becoming aware of the connection between those actions and beliefs and things that they're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's go back to, I'm thinking back here in real time, back to my college days of not doing a calendar at all, and this hectic, frenzied life that I lived. Did I connect those two? I think if I had let myself step into it, I actually would have connected those two. But I think there was this piece that I did not want to acknowledge that was true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Again, this was me, immature, not wanting to grow, being stuck. As a very fixed mindset, right? So I don't encourage you to take on this mindset. But yeah, what connections do exist between your results and your actions? All of them.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Because I can think of a frustrating example as a coach, or if I'm talking with, or maybe not frustrating for me, but talking with someone who it'd be hard for them to see that if they think, oh, I'm doing everything right. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with how I'm doing things. But yet I'm still getting these results I don't like.
Yeah.
And that can be a block where if you have that there, then it's definitely gonna be hard to see that connection there. Certainly I could turn it inward on myself and say, am I trying to hold on to those two beliefs that there's no room for improvement, and yet there's clearly things aren't clearly ideal. So
yeah,
I got to give up on something.
Yeah. Well, and so let's dig into that for a moment more and see if this makes sense with what you're saying is often when we don't get the results that we think we want, right? It's because we have two beliefs that are creating two opposite beliefs that we're somehow marrying together that create the system that we aren't aware we're creating.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense? Does that line up
Yeah.
with what you were just saying?
Yeah. Yeah. You believe on the one hand that you're already at optimal performance. You're doing everything right. There's nothing you're doing wrong. And yet at the same time, you also recognize or complain about, you have these complaints about what's happening.
Yeah.
There are certain things that are happening that you don't like.
Yeah. It's like Atomic Habits. So I think it's like chapter 2 of Atomic Habits. It talks about identity. How do you change, right? So, okay, great. Okay. I recognize the fact that I have a system that is giving me results that I don't want. What do I do? Well, change your system, which comes back to changing your beliefs about yourself, I believe, deep down, like when you get down to the crux of the matter. And how do you change your identity? Well, you choose the identity that you want, right? Choose a system that you want. What do you want to be different? And then take an action in that direction, right? So I'll go back to Derick back in college. Well, what result would have I wanted if I could go back? A more organized, less hectic life. Okay, that's a great identity, right? And a belief that I could be organized. I think there was also that piece that I didn't really think I could be organized. And what's one step in the right direction? Simply going to the bookstore and buying a calendar.
Yeah.
Right? Because I didn't own one. But that's as simple as that sounds. It's difficult in reality, but really it's not difficult what we're talking about if you're willing to sit down and do it, right?
Right.
Or
use, I like what James Clear, he has the 2-minute rule, right? What's that smallest step you can take? Keep shrinking and shrinking it down until you get something that takes only 2 minutes. So I would say you could probably have even shrunk it down to every day I'm just gonna pick up my syllabus.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting now as I think back on this hectic life that I created for myself in college. So my parents live, half a mile from where I went to college. And so every time we go back to visit them, we pass the college. And every time I pass by, I get this small sinking feeling in my soul, because it reminds me of how hectic and crazy life was. Right. And so not only did I create a result in college as a result of these systems that they created, 15 years later, I still have this somewhat sour taste in my mouth about college because I refused to acknowledge that I had a system that was broken.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Right. Even now, just speaking through it, I'm realizing how those are tied together. Right.
Yeah. Because you got past that experience, but the lessons got cemented in there, and it stays there until you go back and unpack it.
And my wife will tell you, right? We were there the same 4 years. As we pass by campus every time, she looks at campus and goes, "Oh, that was a fun time, right? I had a good time in college." Well, she created a completely different result for herself because she had different systems, right? And now that I'm speaking through this, is really, really interesting to me, thinking about the systems that I created 15 years ago. In essence, the results still live through some emotion today.
Wow.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
In not a great way, but what does this mean for me today? What does this mean for you today? The systems and the results that we're creating today will create some kind of emotional tie and results 5, 10, 15 years later, right?
So does this mean like, when you go back to visit your parents, it's kind of a drag for you and it's more fun for your wife?
It's the 30 seconds that it takes to drive.
Yeah, just okay.
But even, okay, so then, let's draw this out one more. We both have kids, right?
Yeah.
As fathers, what results, what systems we have in our lives that are creating results that in some way, intentional or not, are being passed on to our kids just by the way that we live our lives and create the environment in our homes.
Yeah, I mean, especially with my daughter, being, an infant going to toddler, it's, I mean, the daily rhythm of life is all about systems and processes that you have in place, right? And if you don't, not only is it tough for me as a parent, but I'm also going to see it with my child.
Yeah.
Not, sleeping regularly, kind of irritable, so all these pieces kind of contribute to that, and you can definitely see the connection, and you can see, oh, she's not really doing as well because we weren't these 2-3 pieces before that led to that. We kind of got off track, and so it kind of threw her off her rhythm, and that's partly on us, or a lot of it's on us, because we didn't stick to it as well. So it's like a system that we're having to follow ourselves, but also that we along with our child are also part of too.
Yeah. Well, this speaks volumes to me. I've learned a lot through this conversation just about myself. Thank you for having it with me, Bereket. If people want to find you online, where can they find you? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think probably the best way to get a hold of me, I would say email, bereketkelile@gmail, also bereketkelile.com, and my Facebook page, Bereket Kelile, the Exponential Coach. You can find me there. So those are a few places. One of those places I'll see you.
Yeah. It's the perfect way to get a hold of you. One of those 3 places. So Bereket, give us the last word on this idea about the results we get are perfect for the system that we create.
Yeah, I think for me, the takeaway would be that distinction between, you can live a default life reacting to things, or you can take the approach that you're responsible for everything, and everything that's happening around you is a result of the choices that you make. And you can learn a lot about yourself and gain some insights that will lead to action that you can take. Even if you don't think it, just ask yourself, well, what would happen if it was up to me, if it was entirely my choice, what would that mean? What kinds of results would I see? And see the future as something that you create, and as the result of those decisions that you make. And that's certainly going to be helpful as you work on your mindset, because you can't act in discord with your beliefs. You're not going to get actions. You're not going to get results from actions if your thoughts and the way you speak are negative and limiting, so they have to be in concert with each other. But think of that creative life. What do I want to create? What do I want?
So what it sounds like, if you find yourself getting results you don't want, start asking questions about your systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Bereket. This was an inspiring conversation.